Thanks very much for the opportunity to gate crash your meeting and give you an update, which hopefully is a good news update for yourselves. Certainly something we see as good news going forward. I should just say who I am. You can see my name on there, David Allfrey. I'm the Major Projects Manager at Norfolk County Council. I do have some colleagues with me. I'm not going to run through and introduce everyone, but I will just say Tig Armstrong, sitting next to me, is just going to pick up on some wider transport strategy issues once I've run through the presentation. So between us, we'll hopefully give you a good picture of what's going on. So just to kick off on the Third River crossing, just a bit of background really. We did some work through the 2000s, basically to arrive at a preferred route status, which was adopted in 2009, and touched on it in the conversation just a short while ago about the cost-benefit ratio of 4.8, which would be categorised as very high by DFT. So that puts the project in a good place. More recently, we've secured funding from DFT to do the work that's needed to submit a formal outline business case to them. So that's the work we're now taking forwards. I'll touch a bit more on that as we go through. The key really is sort of the potential now to sort of move forwards more rapidly than we previously hoped, and possibly with a start of construction in 2021. Or I'll do an optimistic finish at the end as we go through this. So just running a bit more background. As I say, Tig will touch on wider transport infrastructure, so I'm not going to sort of dwell too much on that, but there are other things going on in terms of the transport investment across Great Yarmouth, so I won't steal Tig's thunder on that front. We are also working with Highways England on their current round of projects. They've got various improvements on the A47 as part of the road investment strategy work round one. We are talking to them. We're hoping to sort of take forward some an opportunity in the round two funding as well. But again, I think Tig will probably touch on that. So I'm going to keep whizzing along. If that's okay. So for the Third River crossing, I suppose the challenges really are sort of some of the key headings there. Higher unemployment deprivation levels than elsewhere in Yarmouth. High congestion levels most peak time, but clearly through the summer much more significant issues that you're trying to deal with. Severance between housing areas and the business areas and the port areas and the employment areas, which linked to that is just general poor connectivity, particularly with the southern end of the peninsula, which is obviously where there's the key business areas. So looking at that and also trying to accommodate increased traffic volumes and going ahead and looking ahead to the future and the opportunities that are there, these are all basic transport challenges that exist for Great Yarmouth. So what we're looking at is really the Third River crossing. What does it bring? And this will, in effect, form part of the overall business case that we take forwards to DFT. But it helps to deliver up to 5,000 jobs based on work that's already been undertaken. It shifts traffic from, for instance, Haven Bridge. It takes a lot of pressure off the Haven Bridge link into the town. Takes some pressure off of Braden Bridge as well, the A12. It brings shorter journey times, particularly from the strategic road network into the key employment areas in the South Dean business area. And clearly one of the key things here is it's reducing some of this congestion, particularly the high season congestion for anything coming up from the south wanting to get to the town. Wider benefit there of gross value added, which is people spending more money, more people, more local spend, more investment opportunities that may not be realised without the scheme. So there's some of the sort of core benefits. In terms of where we are so far, the local major scheme fund is we put this bid into DFT, basically saying that we've got a major project here that is over a £75 million threshold, and that puts us under immense pressure in terms of it's not something that we can readily just go and deliver ourselves. We haven't got the financial clout to do that, either just the county council on its own or collectively or working with the LEP. So that's the pressure we've got. So we've fortunately, DfT announced a local majors scheme fund for these types of projects, and we put a case to them to release some money to enable us to move more quickly than we'd planned. In effect, we've already spent around £4 million up to this point in getting the work completed to identify preferred route status. We've also purchased quite a lot of properties that were in effect blighted by that preferred route status. I would say we've been using those properties, working with Saffron Housing, to actually make sure those properties are still providing homes for people locally. So we've maintained the benefit of those houses. We had identified through the New Anglia LEP funding for next year and the following year, so that would have been us bringing the project forwards. This latest round of funding from DfT has enabled us to move more rapidly than that, so that's put us in a really good position. The key pressure for us now is the timescales we've got to work to. We've got a huge amount of work to do to get the outline business case completed by March. So there's a lot of technical work going on to develop that out. Location-wise, I'm sure you will already be aware of the preferred route alignment. This really connects directly from the A12 due east, flies over the top of Southtown Road and connects to South Dean Road. There's a map representation of that, which I'm not going to dwell on, but that just gives you a flavour of where it is in relation to the peninsula and the A12. That really just zooms you in to the A12 on the left and South Deans Road roundabout, and whether it's a roundabout or not is it's part of the work we're undertaking. But the connection on the right there to South Deans Road, that gives you a feel for the alignment. I would just say as well that sort of plan is an example of the possible bridge structure. We're looking at various options around dualling, single, 3-lane, and really that's part of the work we need to do in terms of just establishing the relative costs to construct the bridge compared to the benefits that it brings, and that really will be the sort of the case that we need to make to DfT. An impression of the bridge in its lifted position. There's technical details around the bridge, what the bridge clearance needs to be in terms of navigation, the distance between the lift points. We're looking at something like 50 metres, so the navigable waterway will stay at around 50. Again, there's discussions around that with the port operators and so on. How many times does the bridge lift? How quickly does it lift? And what are the implications whilst it's in its lifted state? So lots of things to look at. The note I've got here, which actually is really telling, and I'll come back to the importance of this, is in the work we've done to date and sort of where we've established the preferred route alignment and so on, and the consultation we've undertaken so far, albeit some time ago, public response to this was 92% supported the Third River crossing. I think that's absolutely key in terms of driving the project forward, and I will come back to that. I will just touch on as well, we talked briefly about the surveys that are ongoing. Part of the work we need to undertake is to build, in a sense, rebuild the model, the base model, use the traffic data that we are capturing a little bit last week, this week, and through next week to inform that modelling. The importance of this is to make sure that everything we're doing is compliant with DfT guidance. If we're not compliant, they could, in a sense, dismiss the case that we're trying to make as a bit fabricated or whatever. So It's important to get it right. I mean, for us, doing everything we can to satisfy DFT puts us in a stronger position in terms of the potential funding. So that's the key for us at the minute in terms of the current workload that we're undertaking. I quite like this this diagram. It shows the bridge location, but it shows the enterprise zone areas and employment areas. What it also doesn't show is where Haven Bridge is, which is just off the northern tip of that, which gives you some, obviously you'll know this very well, how far you have to travel to get from those report areas in and out effectively through the town or through the edge of the town, which is far from ideal. Certainly far from ideal in terms of the future potential of the inner and outer harbour operations and other business opportunities in this area. The bridge does provide a very direct route from those areas onto the strategic road network, onto the A12, which is an absolute key for us to achieve. In effect, what it also does, though, is, as we mentioned before, traffic coming up from the south, particularly in the sort of summer season, it gives them a much easier access into the town, takes pressure off of what would become 3 optional routes into and out of Great Yarmouth. I'm not going to say too much. You can see just about on the screen there the scale of investment potential and the opportunity that the bridge brings to Great Yarmouth. I suppose the key for me and for the council and for all of us, I think, is we all drive as hard as we can to get some momentum behind the delivery of the project. This is, it's not just the county council doing this. It's working with all of you and Great Yarmouth Borough Council as well to make this happen. It's not a simple task. It's not a fast task, but it's one that if we get behind it, we all know what we can achieve. On the timescales, this is very rough, but it gives some indication of this few little leaflets that have been handed out there. You'll see that on there. I think the key thing really is we're looking at a development consent order process. So that's an order made by the Secretary of State. I don't know how much you've been watching the NDR project around Norwich. That's the process we went through for that as well. So it's in effect an all-encompassing order that deals with the planning, land requirements and any traffic orders that are necessary to deliver the project. So that all comes under that one order. It does mean doing a lot of work at the front end. So all the detailed design needs to be happening at the front end. Quite a lot of consultation to draw out any issues as best we can before we then get into the examination in public. At this point in time, we're suggesting that would be around 2019, 2020. I think what I would stress, that puts us into a 2021 construction window. The driver for me and for others is can we push that, challenge that? And I think actually, to be fair to DFT, they're quite keen to see us try and push that as hard as we can. And that, again, is part of the work we'll be doing with the outline business case to try to see what we can do to still be realistic. There's no point just saying, oh, we'll be on site next year. I mean, you've got to be credible in these things. But it's important, I think, for us to try and get the momentum behind it and try and stick to the program dates that we can. And if we can shave time out, then that's where we need to be. So on that, and this is probably a very quick whiz through, this is my last slide, you'll be pleased to hear. The key for me, I mean, I've touched on the timescales there. I could be being optimistic around the last bullet point there, but I think that's a target we ought to be trying to move towards. We'll test that as we go develop the outline business case, but I'd like to see that as if we can achieve that, that's great. I think the reality is it would be late 2020. It would be outside of, we need to get the summer season out of the way, but, we'll see if we can get that achieved. I think the key for me is the drive behind the project generally. So it's going to be the county council, it's going to be the borough council, it's going to be the business community, it's going to be the LEP, and everyone we can get, and if we can get the public support behind it as well, it's a good thing. It's driving the MPs to do everything we possibly can, but basically when the outline business case goes in, we're in a position to say to DfT, this is a really solid project. So the technical work is there, that's great, but actually there's the weight of opinion behind it, if you like, behind the MPs and the support. That's the job really here, I suppose. That's part, a big part of why I'm sitting here now saying, if we work together, then there's a damn good chance this will happen. We've seen it with other projects. We've seen the A11 dualling. We've seen investment now coming forwards in terms of the A47 through the work of the A47 Alliance. The potential's there, and that's the key for me now taking this forwards, is we're in a sort of delivery mode. I'll stop there. I think I'll skip on from that, just so that there's some details there about if you want to find out further information, by all means have a look at those details on there. Hopefully that will be on your website, available for people to use. I should say one of the things, whilst we're looking to submit the outline business case in March next year, DfT at this point in time have said to us they are seeking to make a decision in the summer of next year, which will give us a clear window then of hopefully we're getting on with it. What they're saying is we are competing with other projects, so the strength of case, the strength of support behind the project is going to be absolutely vital, because it is in a sense, they use the word competition quite a lot. So it's a competitive process. The stronger the case, that ticks a really strong box. But the more support, even better. I'm just going to hand over to Tig now, who will talk a little bit more about wider.
Well, I just thought it might actually be useful if we just got Claire Sullivan to say a few words. Claire's actually managing the consultation work stream alongside the technical work stream. And I think if Claire just said a few words about what she's doing, I think that's sort of an important kind of parallel track to what David's doing on the technical front.
Okay, thanks, Tig and David. I mean, I think what happened in the last stage is really crucial to what has to happen this stage, because your support, you wrote letters, you wrote to the ministers, Eleanor was putting, you were putting the right pressure on the right people, and we had a positive outcome. And I think in this stage of writing the outline business case, it's crucial that we have that support and you do the same thing over again, because it is competitive. And the competition is there, and government, it's the loudest voice really. We have to be shouting, businesses have to be really pushing the case, isn't it, that this is what we want, and putting the pressure on the politicians that Great Yarmouth is where you want to invest the money, and Great Yarmouth there is a good economic case, and you need to give us money so we can build the bridge and take it into the next phase. So as part of this outline business case work, right at this minute I'm working on it, end of November until the end of January, I'm hoping to do more public consultation. I've got dates lined up. We'll be doing a leaflet that's more public friendly based on the one that you have. And we're also identifying other business opportunities where we can talk to more businesses. We talk to Peel Ports a lot, who are very supportive. And it's identifying, and I've been working with Eleanor to identify the right places to be and to get the right people to hear the right message, so we can all put the pressure on through this process. So, and Brandon Lewis is supportive. We're meeting Brandon, we're meeting our politicians to brief. So it's all going on in the background. March 2017 is not a long way away. So it's as much as we can do really to support this piece of the puzzle so we can get the bridge. So I can answer any questions after on consultation or any other if you want, or I can let Tig. Pressure.
So I've had one question from the audience online. I think the figure of 100 million has been used in relation to this project in terms of perhaps it being a £100 million investment in Great Yarmouth. The question was around whether it is a £100 million construction project itself. So I'll pass you back to David.
Okay, so the work we did before has looked at a potential cost of around 140 million at 2015 prices. What I would say is that part of the outline business case work now is to actually look at the options and assess the cost of those options versus the benefits they bring. So it's going to be in a range, probably from 100 up to significantly higher than that, and that's the work that we need to do, and it's arriving at the right balanced answer in terms of the cost of the solution versus the transport benefits it brings. So that really forms part of the feedback from the consultation process as well. All of that needs to be factored in, so it's not just a technical piece of work, it's also responding to what people expect to see.
In the funding, are local contributions relevant?
Yes, they are. So what we would do is look for DFT to provide the majority funding, but DFT will be quite clear in terms of there's an expectation of a local contribution. We are assessing that to be something between 10 and 20%, and obviously I think DFT would like nearer 20%. We'll try and argue something maybe lower than that, but that's the balance of debate that we'll have, and that's a judgment call in terms of the business case submission.
But we will be passing the hat round tonight.
Yeah.
I think it's important to take every opportunity. All right, thank you. Okay, so my name's Tig Armstrong. I'm the manager of the infrastructure and economic growth team. So we do a lot of the sort of longer term planning around infrastructure needs, things like the third river crossing, the A47. I just thought I'd come along with David and Claire, just because whilst the river crossing is a major project. It's a major project for the council, for the borough, for business and the residents, and it is taking up a lot of time, and that's as it should be. There's a huge number of other things going on in Great Yarmouth at the moment that we're also involved in. I don't have any slides, but if it's useful, we could write up something after this, because it might just, I wouldn't expect everyone to kind of, it makes my head swim just trying to kind of remember all of this. So if it's useful, I could write a note after the meeting just to give people a sense of the other things that we're working on. So one of the things that David said was that the government fast-tracked a couple of these schemes, and I think I'm right in saying we're only one of two in the country that won fast-track money. Is that right? One of four. So there weren't many so there's a number of people putting bids in. There weren't many, so it certainly got visibility in London, in Westminster, which is really, really important, and that's why sort of the way that David expressed that need to sort of maintain that momentum is so important, because it does have that level of visibility as a major project already. So that, that's why that is so important. But in addition to that, and I'm sure some of you will know about some of this, but through another government funding package called the Growth Deal, which is managed through the LEP, through the Local Enterprise Partnership, we're also managing about a £9 million package of transport improvements. We've started some of the early design work and thinking about a package of improvements to the local road networks, but that money sort of will be expended over the next 3 to 4 years. And we'll also be running some consultations around the sorts of projects and the sorts of schemes that we would prioritise using that £9 million simultaneously with the consultations for the third river crossing. So, I mean, it makes sense for us to consult once, but the other part of this whole thing is our ability and the necessity to coordinate between a £9 million package of local road improvements and network improvements, as well as what's going on with the bridge. And it's a real challenge, because the bridge is kind of, it's still some years off, but we're having to now think about already sort of early design and the ons and the offs for the bridge, and then how that interfaces with anything else we might want to do. And clearly we don't want to be sort of narrowing options by any of the other work we're doing. So we're having to sort of try and manage those two things in parallel. So that's £9 million worth of improvements to the local networks, which can be used. It's going to be used not only for improvements to roads, but also for bus routes, cycleways, pedestrianisation, a whole range of other things as well is incorporated in that package. As I said, and the consultation that's going to start shortly will pick up a lot of that. We've also got another £2 million, again, via the growth deal, specifically for improvements from for improving the access from the train station through to the marketplace, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. And so we're looking at, that's getting caught up with another aspect of work that's going on, that the borough have engaged Carter Jonas to undertake this town centre master plan. It doesn't quite go all the way to the train station, but it goes quite close, and so we're now having to look at how we coordinate the expenditure of that $2 million and what the design might look like. And there's issues with land ownership and acquisition. I'm sure you're aware of the pathway between the bridge and the main road. And so that's another bit of work that's ongoing. And again, we're having to look at how we coordinate with that master planning, with the master plan work that Carter Jonas are doing for the borough. So that's another £2 million package. David's already mentioned that there's a further £2 million through the growth deal. Again, once we've spent this first 1.2 odd million pounds on the outline business case, government's approval of the outline business case, or their support of it, will then unlock that further 2 million, which will be the next tranches of money that we use to sort of take forward the development process and working up to the development consent order process. So, so just from growth deal alone, we're sort of looking after about 13 odd million pounds worth of funding going to a range of different schemes. Highways England, as you probably also know, and David's mentioned, we were very fortunate for Highways England, and due to a really good business case that was put forward by the A47 Alliance and others to secure £300 million worth of investment for the A47 dualling and junction improvements. So that'll make a huge difference from the stretch, obviously, between Akeland and Norwich. But there's also, as David alluded to, there's money for the key intersections on the A11 and A47 essentially. And so we're having to work really, and that's sort of taxing David a fair bit too, is trying to work with Highways England similarly to make sure that they don't sort of advance a scheme which then kind of locks off options for David's team in terms of design later on. And so we're really having to kind of manage that quite closely as well and look at what's the best way to sort of to manage that and who might take responsibility for various aspects of those programs. I'm sure you're all also aware that sort of on the A47 Alliance. So the A47 Alliance is now gearing up again, and Claire's very involved in gearing up again now for a second round of announcements. So the 300 million was under a 5-year program called the Road Improvement Strategy, Phase 1. They're now thinking about Phase 2, which is funding for works between 2020 and 2025. And so the A47 Alliance is now gearing up to determine its priorities to look at the next case that it takes to government for funding in that second phase. And the Acle Strait obviously is the county council's two priorities that they'll feed into that overall sort of business case of the A47 Alliance is the Acle Strait and some more works further out towards Kings Lynn. So there's likely to be a business breakfast held early in the new year to sort of kick that process off again with the Alliance. I'm sure you're all aware of the work that's going, well, you may be aware of the work going on around South Deans, and sort of the sort of addressing the land ownership issues and the leasing issues, and this work's being supported again by what they call the Norfolk Infrastructure Fund, and that's the borough and the county council working very closely together and looking how that can be progressed. I guess where that leaves us, it leaves me with my head swimming as we try to coordinate all of these things. But I think what it kind of where it does take us to a point is how do we actually start to think about how we actually govern all of this work? How do we deliver it in a coordinated fashion, and perhaps what strategy are we actually working to in the longer term, in the sort of medium to longer term? And I think it's fair to say that at this point in time, it is a bit piecemeal. We've been really fortunate to be able to secure these various funding packages, but none of it's come out of a sort of a coordinated long-term vision for the infrastructure, for the transport and infrastructure more generally, the needs in the borough. And I think we've got already a number of forums, and dare I say we've probably got too many forums already. We've got something called the Great Yarmouth Development Company, which you might be aware of, that delivered the Royal Britannia Crescent redevelopment. It sort of sits within something else called the Great Yarmouth Area Board, which is a joint vehicle between the County Council and the borough. More recently, county councillors and borough council have got together and set up something else called the Transport and Infrastructure Steering Committee, which has a working group working to it. All of these things kind of make sense in their own right, but I think what we need to do is, over time, and where we're sort of heading is how do we kind of bring this together into something kind of a bit more sensible, a bit more streamlined, a bit more logical, to provide that greater sense of coordination to be able to develop and work to a strategy. And I think importantly, how do we bring other sectors into that whole kind of area of looking at prioritisation and longer term strategies. So I guess the message from me is there's a hell of a lot going on, and it's a kind of it's quite a task trying to coordinate what we have got, and at the same time as trying to do that almost on a sort of day by day basis. We are going to start to try to knit together all these various kind of forums that we have that have all got a strong interest in that into something that's kind of a bit more cohesive. I think ultimately, some of you will be aware there's something called the Norwich Area Transportation Strategy, which is sort of a long established strategy for transport improvements in and around Norwich, and that makes a lot of sense. And you can return to that document. David's team is responsible for delivering it. You can return to that document time and time again. It's about to get updated, and we can sort of put new information into that. And I think ultimately getting towards something similar for Great Yarmouth is going to be really important, and it does give that place to return to and kind of bring the evidence in and develop a strategy. And we all know then what it is we're working towards. So that's a bit of a wrap up from me. I made some other note that I don't really understand here, so I'll just leave that one. But happy to answer any questions.